Tonight's video is going to review the digestion of food. This is a good review for our test that's coming up on Wednesday. This is going to quickly recover the 3 enzymes involved with digestion and a couple other things. The digestive process begins before you even put food into your mouth. The sight and smell of food alone gets your digestive tract ready for further digestion of food. But once food does enter your mouth, chewing of your food increases the surface area, allowing faster digestion. This increases the reaction rate factor for surface area, and so further digestion will proceed a lot faster for your body than if you were to swallow that food whole. Look at how often an animal like a snake eats compared to that of a human. We eat 3-4 times a day, whereas a snake might only eat a couple times a week, depending on what they've eaten. And that's because of the chewing process and how long it takes to digest it. Another important part of digestion in the mouth is that of the digestion of starch. This is where starch digestion begins. And it begins with an enzyme called amylase. Amylase's sole responsibility is to digest starch. And this will allow you to get nutrients from that starch. So potatoes, rice, grains, bread, anything that has starch in it, this is where the digestion starts. And it might taste kind of sweet if you were to hold it in your mouth due to the digestion producing maltose as the sugar from the digestion of starch. Digestion in the stomach is the next step in the process after the food passes your esophagus. And what happens when that food enters your stomach is it enters an environment that's full of acid and pepsin. And this acid and pepsin, this hydrochloric acid, is responsible for the digestion of protein. Pepsin on its own is the enzyme that does digest protein, but it's secreted in an inactive form, meaning that it's not active until it has the right conditions. And this is good for you, because if it was active in your own cells, it would digest your cells and we wouldn't be here. So within your stomach you have hydrochloric acid, and the cell walls of your stomach are protected by a mucus layer there so that the hydrochloric acid and the pepsin doesn't digest your stomach. In addition to the digestion by hydrochloric acid and pepsin, your stomach is also undergoing what's called peristalsis. What peristalsis does is this mixes your food for digestion by involuntary muscle contractions that contract your stomach and relax it, mixing that food up with the stomach contents and the acid and pepsin that's found in there to produce a substance called chyme. This chyme is like a paste that then enters our small intestine for further digestion. Within the small intestine, this is where most of your nutrient absorption takes place. Here, nutrients are absorbed into the blood. Further digestion of your food needs to take place though, because we've only started digesting starch and we've only digested protein in the stomach. So here you'll find additional enzymes. You will also find additional amylase within the small intestine. But one of the other enzymes that we talked about in the labs was that of lactase. Lactase is responsible for digesting all of the dairy products that we consume. Without it, you would not be able to digest cheese, milk, cottage cheese, ice cream, butter, yogurt, any additional dairy products. What happens here is the lactase enzyme specifically targets the lactose sugar, which is made up of glucose and galactose, and breaks it down into individual sugar molecules of galactose and glucose that are then absorbed into your blood. After digestion in the small intestine, your body continues to try and absorb as many nutrients as it can. Once it gets to the large intestine, though, a lot of that goes to the bacteria that are found there, and also your body's way of recovering any remaining nutrients before waste is released from your system. If you are lactose intolerant, that means that you are deficient for the lactase enzyme, which is fairly common. It's a mutation that allows some of us to eat dairy products as an adult. What happens is that lactose sugar ends up in your large intestine, and there are bacteria there that love lactose sugar for a food source, and they continue to grow out of control, which causes a lot of the lactose intolerant problems such as bloating, gas, and cramps. The last thing I want to talk about is we've talked about 3 enzymes here at this point. We've talked about amylase, pepsin, and lactase. But what exactly is an enzyme? Enzymes are catalysts. They're biological catalysts that are made of proteins. Their sole responsibility is to speed up chemical reactions and are not consumed in the process. But one difference between an enzyme and a catalyst is that catalysts tend to speed up reactions no matter what the conditions really are like. Whereas enzymes, they have specific conditions that they work under. And so they're dependent on pH and temperature. So if we look at this graph here, down below, what we find is that the temperature for this enzyme activity has a maximum activity at about 40 degrees Celsius. And if you get colder than that, activity drops off, and if you get warmer than that, activity drops off. The same conditions are found with pH. That's why I said before, pepsin needs acidic conditions to be active. If you don't have acidic conditions, it's not going to be active, and it's not going to do what it needs to do. So if you had no hydrochloric acid in your stomach, pepsin wouldn't work. Amylase, on the other hand, it gets under acidic conditions and it stops working because it's meant to work under neutral conditions. All of our enzymes are really designed to work around 37 degrees Celsius. You get too hot compared to that or too cold, and their activity decreases, and it ultimately leads to possible death of the organism. There are questions on Nomia that are part of this review. Please go ahead and answer them. This is counting as extra credit doing it. And good luck on the test on Wednesday, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.